basically, as quickly as they can so they don't get apprehended. It's exactly the same here, on a larger scale, of course, and bigger funds we're talking about. But here they want to be able to kill all the machines in the bot. They want to be able to shut down the servers. They want to be able to cover all of their tracks very quickly. So they build in this sort of fail-safe system to keep themselves protected. Now, within this overall context, the drop zone is the server that they're using to hold the stolen loot. Everything that they've taken from a given individual or that they've siphoned out from a particular business. Of course, they're going to want to have a sort of high availability or failover here too, so they're not going to focus everything in just one location. They're going to use several of these things so that if one of them fails or is discovered, it's not the end of their business. What's in the Trojan drop zone? Well, it's pretty much anything they can gather from a victim computer. Quite often that's going to be just files which are screenshots of whatever was on the screen, because what they're looking to do is capture input from the mouse, from the keyboard, and it may be, captures of games that people are playing, it may be captures of logins, it may be captures of what's in the browser, it could be pretty much anything. Text files containing information such as passwords, for example, or credit card numbers, also very important to cybercriminals. And there's other stuff as well, configuration information, and also certificates which are used in banking transactions as well. They all get gathered by these guys too, very important for them. Screen captures, because that's a way of spying on people. Text files, because that's all the private confidential information, our PINs, our logins, credit cards, passwords. Certificates, as I mentioned, because that adds security to a banking transaction. It's not good enough quite often now for banks, just to say who you are and put your password in. You need extra levels of security. So the bad guys need that stuff as well in order to masquerade as us when they try to log in to our bank account. And then finally, configuration information too. So what about the logs? Well, if you open the logs up, it's fairly easy to read. You can get information on the country of origin, where the victim is. You can get information on what operating system. You can get information on what other resources are on that victim computer. And it's all easily readable. Obviously, such log files also contain financial information specifically. It could be, the CVV numbers from the back of cards. It could be the login and the password. It could be PIN numbers. Anything really that has a financial dimension to it, which gives them the opportunity to be us online and siphon off information from our accounts. They can even go a stage further and actually intercept transactions on the fly. Particularly important, really, where banks have implemented more advanced systems for authenticating the individual customer with the bank, where you've got multi-factor authentication. You don't just have your username and password, but you have some token of kinds which identifies who you are for that particular transaction. So these guys can actually intercept in real time a transaction and reroute the funds that you want to move around. And without you realizing that this is going on, of course. So finally, let's take a look then at the overall profitability profile, if you like. And this is composite information based on intelligence gathering rather than, a particular cybercriminal group. But again, you've got the peaks and troughs, of course. But if you look at the actual trajectory there, it's obviously in the favor of the cybercriminals. 400% growth over 9 months. Now, we're right in the middle of a recession, so clearly that sort of growth rate is enviable for any business. And there's not too many businesses can match that in the present climate, so they're doing pretty well. Yes, there are troughs, and one particular point here you think, well, minus figures, how do you manage that? Well, if people complain to their credit card company, that money can actually end up back in their account. One thing as well which is borne out by research done by Nico, is the fact that as well, in order to look legitimate, feel legitimate, some of these scareware vendors will actually respond to complaints put to them as well and give money back. It all adds to the kind of semi-legitimacy that they're trying to create out there on the internet. So overall, 1.7 million in that 9-month period. That's a big chunk of change. And you can certainly see why it's worth their while to actually engage in this type of business. Again, going back to what I said earlier, you know, it's low risk, easy to do, and profitable. So if we summarize then, it's highly profitable for these guys. Yes, some of the systems they're using are very sophisticated, but the sophistication is done at the ground level by the people coding, you know, the botnet management tools or, you know, individual exploit code. That's all done there. The people actually making the money, if you like, or the biggest money out of this are a level above that. They're not necessarily coding this stuff themselves. They're just using it to deliver spam or attack other people or steal the credentials, steal the confidential data. There are many, many victims, and there's always a fresh pool of victims. And given that much of this is social engineering based, and Stefan will talk about this more after I've finished, there's always some new hook to get people in. There's no shortage of mechanisms to hook new victims. And, you know, we should really stop thinking in terms of when are we going to solve cybercrime. We don't, any of us ask the question, you know, when is crime going to go away? Because we all know that where humans gather together, there are always people who will try to cut corners and try to make money illegitimate, in an illegitimate way. Well, cybercrime, yes, it's a child of the internet age, but it's also a child of crime in general. And really what we need to focus on doing is mitigating the problem rather than, you know, hope to eradicate it. What that means, well, from a societal point of view, you know, from governments, they need to enforce legislation. They need to frame legislation, first of all, for tackling cybercrime. Their job really is to maximize the risk for would-be cybercriminals. The job of technology companies like ours, the job of human resources department in businesses, the job of governments and other agencies within society is to try to develop what I would call an online common sense that will enable us all to minimize our exposure to the potential risk when we go online. And really education needs to be a big focus. We can all tell our children when they go out to parties and so on, you know, what the potential dangers are. You know, stay in a group, don't flash your money around, be careful about flashing your iPod or your phone, don't cut down dark alleys. But there's no equivalent online common sense that people my age can automatically pass on to their children. And, you know, we all have a responsibility for trying to develop such an online common sense. Okay, at that point I'm going to stop talking and pass it back to Ryan, and thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, David.